insimbi yelishumi ekuseni. We praise. To God be the glory.
It's 6 o'clock on the dot. Sanvusela Sanamugela Lomtlekseni on the Kusile Breakfast Show. Sanvusela Lomtleksen, thank you for joining us this beautiful morning. Nalokwenje temperatures buya wangathi ehlile lamuhla liyana etinzaweni letiningi lapha eveni. Sithemba ukuthi nifuthumele lapho nikhona khona ukukhumbuta ukuthi you can also watch us on our YouTube page Eswatini TV. December wangathi uyagijima mngweni. You're already on the 6th day of December.
Yeah, ugijima nje mphambeni lokuculisako noma ngisike lokuthokotisako indzaba yokuthi siyadibona timvula tibane kusikhombisa ukuthi ngathi tiyafuna lo ukuthi tibe khona. Ngiyakhumbula nje evikini leliphelile kunenzathele emsakado leka yaphuma yokukhulumisana nabo balimi kutheni sibonana ukushisa lokungathi kuyachubeka lokukhathatha abalimi kakhulu njengoba vele sibafakile lihlavu emasimini. Siyabona lo muhla uvete indzaba ukuthi kungathi likhombisa ngathi litakuna licala itole empeleni ukuthi lingathi liyasiphotisa kancane. So it is quite interesting kubona ukuthi lokho ke kuyendeka. 14 degrees to 16 degrees Celsius are the expected weather temperatures rather esukwini la lo muhla Sanvusela ekseni. Welcome to the program once again. It is going to be an interesting show as per usual. Sikathile ukuthi sibe nalesitawu bakhulumisa labatasi khulumisa indzaba leti tasifundisa lokunengi particularly ngentfutfuko lekhona lapha event but nje singangena lapha khulungelela. I think you're touching indzaba ukuthi December kungathi uyagijima. It's the 6th of December.
There's a lot of activities, there's a lot of campaigns. There's this ongoing campaign nje 16 days of activism against GBV lephela mhla ka 10 December. So nje sacubeka sireza i-awareness ngokuthi asiphathane kahle sicaphele mhlambe timpawu talabo lesibona kwangathi bafuna ke kusihlukubeta. We'll be joined by the executive director losuka khona kakwakha invota. Sikhuluma sadona nje letindzaba letinjoba mibiko nje iveta nje ukuthi violence against women and girls remains one of the most prevalent human rights violations in the world. Umbiko nje lochamuka ka WHO yaveta ukuthi emhlabeni wonke an estimated 736 million women, almost 1 in 3, have been subjected to physical or sexual intimate partner violence, non-partner sexual violence, or both, and at least once in their life. Umkhankaso ke walonyaka calls on citizens to show how much they care about ending violence against women and girls, and also call on governments worldwide to share how they are investing in GBV prevention. Sifuna ukukhulumisana ke naye director wakakwakha invota sakhuluma ukuthi kwakha invota inhlangano lebuke nje tindzaba dabo babe kanye nebafana labancane bayeke babambe ema discussions noma ke ama dialogues mimangweni lehlukahlukene kuva nje imivo yabo babe ukuthi ingabe kusuke sekunjani yasebenda lokho yini bakhathatako bona sithi abesinaye kuva ukuthi ngabe vele mhlambe nabahlangene nabo babe yini labayivetako kahle kahle bayavetani ukuthi nabo bayahlukubeteka ngoba nabo bobabe iyavela imibiko ukuthi bayahlukubeteka bayabahlukubeta boma ke bakaba. So sithi abesinaye lomplexeni ngapha 6
Lungelela utawukhumbula ukuthi at least 2.5 weeks ago sibene ndvuna iteklima lapha ehlelweni indvuna Mandla Chauka sinza indzaba lenkulu kakhulu indzaba ukuthi yasangena ehovisi ufuna ukuthuthukisa indzaba ukuthi livela kangwane libe nawo emanti lanele Tete khona ukuthi livela kangwane khona ukuthi limela waphethe indzaba ukuthi tilimo tetfu la kangwane 80% wato te rain fed lokukhatsata kakhulu ke nasibuka kuguquguquka kwesimo selitulu lesibona nje COP28 kukhulunyiswa kona ukuthi this has been the hottest year ever litulu vele ngathi selincane kakhulu kunomsebenzi ke loqhubekayo. I think one of the commitments lasitshela ngawo la hlelweni ukuthi vele tawasukumela ke magonzo so vele uwasukumele livele Eswatini libambe umhlangano lobuka ukuthi kuliwa njani netinkinga letivikela kuba khona kwemanti kulamave lasesifundeni lesendansi neAfrica. It is called Rethinking Irrigation Investments for SMEs Sadak region livele kangwane ke nalo litawuzuza kulo mhlangano lona likhona ukuthi ngathi mfombeni ukuthi
asibukele ihamba imbili kumaphephandaba.
Kwalomhla siphindze sikwamukele ehlelweni lesikhathanyalo sitawufuna kubuka ihloko lethamba embili phephandzabeni Times of Eswatini.
Lethamba imbili Bacede Mthandeni tells supporters we are not backing down. Maintain call for elected PM. We are still in it. We are not shaking. Ngekusho kwaBacede. As ke ex-Hosiya MP impressed by some Sibaya submissions. Matter has been postponed to next year. More on page 2. Kulenyele hamba imbili men, 3 dogs left in the cold after structures demolished. Kulenyele hamba imbili Cece has resigned from Pudemo. Kansina Sibugai from 5 paper leak. Suspects face 10 years and also a 50,000 emalangeni fine. Kuletibuya Nhlangano cops seek Prime Minister's intervention on promotions.
The Midlalo Times of Eswatini this Wednesday morning making the leading headline. Babane Swallow supporters will be happy to learn that their players have recovered in time for Sunday's massive showdown against rivals Highlanders. It is dubbed timely boost for Giants as Stars back for big derby. Birds will face off in Eswatini's biggest fixture this coming weekend. On another one, Ibuyile Ngwenyama Cup. We see Ngwenyama Cup Pro Lenhle Masuku being assisted by Nombilo Dlamini from Nyamane Classic team during the regional semi-final draw for the tournament. Kuleti Tombele Tiganzige Lenye Eswatini's Ronaldinho is closer to South Africa move. Former Babane Swallows development player Ronaldinho Dlamini has agreed to join South Africa's former Premier Soccer League side Maritzburg United reserve team ahead of the January transfer window. As Jude Bellingham wins Golden Boy Award.
All right, it's 7 minutes after 6. Stabahlela etimakethe sibene tindzaba Eswatini.
Umsakazo wetithombe iEswatini TV utibophelele kuhlonipha nekulandzela umgomo wetekusakata loweluswe libandla letekuchumana eveni.
Ngephansi kwalomgomo sitimisele kusakata tindzaba letentiya ngaleso sikhatsi tindzaba letide emagama lacosheme letitsembekile letitsintsa tonke tinhlangothi naletisebaleni
kusukela kutepolitiki tetemphilo tekulima tetinkantolo netemhlaba wonke jikelele siniletsela tindzaba njengoba tinjalo ngaleso sikhatsi letenteka ngaso.
Kanzi kulomsakato siphindze sikulethele lonke luhlobo lwetemidlalo kusuka emidlalweni welibhola letinyawo kuye emidlalweni ledlalelwa ematafuleni kanye naleto letichamuka ngaphandle kwakuleli.
Leti tindzaba lowutiletselwa ngumsakazo wetithombe iEswatini TV.
Asiphinde sikwamukele ehlelweni sibuke nathi tindzaba emave ase-Afrika kumele asebenzisane ekulweni netinkinga letikhona letivikela umkhicito wetekulima nekuswelakala kwemandi. Liveke lase-Eswatini libambe umhlangano lobuka kutsi kuliwa njani netinkinga letivikela kuba khona kwemandi kulamave kutsi kamete-ke tekulima. Anzi-ke lo mhlangano ungenelwe ngemave esifundza selivekati le-Afrika nendvuna yetekulima Mandla Chauka kanti-ke ubanjelwe eMountain View eMbabane ngalesibili.
I hope this forum will give us the platform to learn and visit project sites to see and interact with farmers so that we design solutions fit for purpose and informed by needs extracted from the most affected.
I-International Fund for Agriculture Development IFAD ihlanganise emave esifundza se-Afrika kutobukisana indzima ledlalwa tekulima ngekunisela irrigation lokwenta-ke imimango iphile kulamave noko-ke atobukisana kutsi lolu hlangothi luthuthukiswa kanjani. Howard Mbuyisa wesikhwama saka-IFAD uyenaba ngalo mhlangano.
Kutoshiyelwana ligwayi-ke la kutsi best practices noma tindlela letikahle tekwenta lokho ukuthi kube sustainable going forward ngutiphi. Sitaba 3 ke wemalanga kulela kusasa sitawuvakashela tindzawo khona lapho hulumende abambisene nema communities ende khona kuvuna emandi wa develop ema schemes ekunisela. Sitawuphindze sibone nabalimi labakwenta lokho on their private capacities and how they are making money out of it.
Francisco Ripoli lophetse lesikhwama e-Afrika uthi kushiyela naligwayi ngendlela yekunisela kutawusita ekuthuthukiseni tekulima.
Small producers, they all struggle, they're facing tremendous challenges.
Balimi labancane labatsike betika kakhulu ngekubade emanti lekanele nekuguquguquka kwesimo selitulu yinkinga lesikhungetse sonke simave. Sibheke ukuthi siphumene likhambi laletinkinga.
Lo mhlangano utawuchubeka kulamalanga lamabili letako. Etindzabeni ngingigiyani Msibi nginanothile Sithole sisa-Mountain View eMbabane.
Kumcoka ukuthi libe neluhlaka lokho ukuthi lingawugcina kanjani ukuthi futhi-ke ungalahleki umlando kanye nemagugu elive uma kungaba netimo tetehlakalo. Lokhu-ke kuvetwe ngumabhalane lomkhulu etiko letekwatisa phesheya Dube nakavula umhlangano eHappy Valley wekwakha umkhombandlela ukuthi umlando welive utawugcinwa kanjani kuthi-ke ungalahleki uma kunetehlakalo.
Njengoba kuguquguquka kwesimo selitulu kuhlasela emave lamaningi emhlaba lokufaka ekhatsi leSwatini, tonke tinhlangothi tiyatilungiselela ukuthi tingativikela kanjani uma kuvela tehlakalo. Libandla leligcina umlando welive iNational Archives yakhala uhlaka lwekubhekana netehlakalo. Mabhalane lomkhulu etiko letekwatisa phesheya Dube uchaza kabanti ukuthi lumcokwa kangakanani lolihlaka.
So kumcoka ukuthi liplan lelifana naleli silakha ngoba phela nyalo ngaleti customary climate change lama disasters emaningi kakhulu. Siboneke kulamanye amave kuba netimvula kugcina kukhukhuleke emabheleni. Kulamanye amave kusuka emlilo lengesheya kwetilwane. So lelo plan lelo kufanele lokuthi libe khona.
Sive sithi kuyakhuthata kubona litiko libuka tindlela tekugcina umlando welive ungalahleki nangesikhathi setehlakalo.
Siyadinga ukuthi sati nekuthi nalabanye labaseta emva kwethu badinga umlando welive.
Umlando kufanele ugcinwe kahle uze wendlulele ukuthi ugcinwe digital ngoba tonke tintfo nyalo seti digital.
Mina ngikukhanza ngathi kumcokwa lokho lokuthi umlando vele kasugcina sitodati ukuthi nawuliswati utati lokuthi ubuya kuphi wekuzabukaphi wekuvelaphi kunani yini lokukhona laveni kunani.
Umlando welive umcoka kakhulu kithi siyabonga kakhulu etikweni.
Mabhalane lomkhulu uthi uhulumende ngekwesekelwa libandla letehlakalo iNational Disaster Management Agency utibophelele kwesekela lelibandla leligcina umlando welive lisakha lolihlaka. Etindzabeni teSwatini TV kubika Nelisiwe Ndlangamandla kunavuma inkosi enzinisa ezulwini.
Mapalane lomkhulu etiko letekwatisa phesheya Dube uphindze wathi ke kude live lingasalele emuva kuleti tabangcono bamshina netebuchwephesha kudzingeka kubambisana kwato tonke tinhlangothi ikakhulukati luhlaka lwetemtsetfo kude ke lonke eliswati livikeleke lisasebentisa tekuchumana. Dube bekakhuluma emhlanganweni wekuncwadzisa ke betemtsetfo ngetindzaba tebucala lobenteka kubongcono bamshina kantsi ke bekamelelwe lisekela lakhe Macanjana Motsa.
Ingcitshi lomhlangano wesikolo akufundisa betemthetho emaphoyisa abashushisi nabo manje ngetindlela tekusebenta emacala lenteka kubongcomvo mshina pheceleti cybercrime. Lo mhlangano uvulwe ngumabhalane lomkhulu etiko letekwatisa phesheya Dube lobekamelelwe lisekela lakhe Macanjana Motsa.
In a world that is increasingly interconnected, the need for a resilient and well-informed response to cyber threats cannot be overstated or overemphasized. The workshops we are commencing today aim to equip our dedicated professionals with the knowledge and skills needed to navigate the complexities of cybersecurity effectively.
Umphathi welibandla lengamele tekuchumana lapha event lobekamelelwe ngithanya Disoza Butler ukhulume ngebumcoka bekubambisana.
Cybercrime is a scourge that needs to be uprooted as a matter of urgency. The nation is depending on you as the first foot soldiers against such crime.
Lobuketi inhlelo enhlanganweni yakamhlaba lebuketi indzaba tekuchumana International Telecommunications Union and Rita Seboha uthi le nhlangano itimisele kulibambisa live laseSwatini kude tekuchumana tibe ngileto letiphephile.
Our role, mandate right now, is to ensure that we connect everyone, wherever the means, wherever you are, we want to make sure that you're connected. And that means giving you secure connectivity, ensuring that it's affordable and the safety news and meaningful to our people.
Umbiko wembufo embubene sive uveta ukuthi emaswata lahlekelwe imali lengetulu kwetinkhulungwane letilikhulu temalangeni ngebucala lobenteka kubongcomvo mshina ngetinyanga letingaba sitfupha. Etindzabeni Eswatini TV kubika samkalisiwe khoza nginasimuva Shongwe kalobamba.
Emavele vekati le-Afrika kufake ekhatsi live laseSwatini adzinga kucinisa imitsetfo lebukele emalungelo nenhlalakahle yabomake.
Litiko letemtsetfo nemtsetfosisekelo libambisana neliphiko lwenyuvesi yasePitoli lelibukete emalungelo ebantfu iCenter for Human Rights lihlangene labatsintseka etindzabeni temtsetfo kwetfula umbiko wetincumo leticondzene nelive laseSwatini ngetemalungelo ebantfu letichamuka enhlanganweni yebunye bemave livekati le-Afrika ligatsha lelibuke emalungelo ebantfu i-African Commission on Human Rights and People's Rights.
Lama recommendations afaka ekhatsi ukuthi asibeni nayo vele i-office letawubuka tindzaba te-legal assistance, the legal aid, kuti futhi asichubeke sende ukuthi i-Commission yethu on Human and People's Rights ayibe ngule standarding as per the Paris Principles. Nalamanye lafaka ekhatsi ukuthi akubukwe tindzaba tako kuhlukubetekwa kwabomake because lokho kuyi-violation yemalungelo abo.
Umphathi we-Center for Human Rights Matilda Lasekopoko uthi imihambo emave livekati le-Afrika ngiyo legcine icinzetela emalungelo abomake kulamave.
A big issue that has been flagged, which we find replicating itself in many African countries on the continent, is the question of customary practices and the predominance of patriarchal norms and the extent to which they hinder the implementation of the Maputo Protocol and the rights that are to enable women's equality in our society.
Live laseSwatini liyingcenye yemave livekati le-Afrika langamashumi-44 latibophelela ngaphansi kwezivumelwano sekuhambisa embili emalungelo abomake senhlangano yebunye bemave livekati le-Afrika lesatiwa ngele-Maputo Protocol. Etindzabeni Eswatini TV kubika samkalisiwe khoza nginasimuva Shongwe esulwini.
Libandla lelikoleka umthelo i-Eswatini Revenue Service lithi bosomabhizinisi batawuceceshwa kabanti ngelihlelo lolusha lokubhadala umthelo ngetebuciko lolwatiwa ngele-Integrated Revenue Administration System. Lokhu ke kuvetwe ngilobukete kumaketha kuleli bandla Vusi Dlamini uma achaza ukuthi lolu hlelo lutawuqala eminyakeni lotako.
Le system ngitawenda kokuthi kube ngcono nekuthi nabasubmit lawo returns bakhone kubona bakhone kutfola boma statements nekuthi bakhone kwenta tinto ngcono mhlawumbe kunalele sebenta konyalo so bese planeke ukuthi sitayi introduce mhla ka 1 December but ke ngekwekuthi kunenglesisafuna ukuthi sikwende nabo somabhizinisi ikakhulukati kubafundzisa kabanti nekuba trainer noma ke kuba ndawuthi send capacity building on ukuthi le system itawusebenza kanjani sibese sithi mhlawumbe asesike sithathe break kusukela nyalo kuya ku January.
Inhlangano yabosomabhizinisi bemdabu kaHoho Johannes Manikela uthi kuyakhuthata kubona le nkampani ifundisa abosomabhizinisi ngendlela lefanele babhadale ngayo umthelo.
Liqiniso sibasibida basibriefa ngawo first week for ukukhulumela ibhizinisi ukuthi siwadi lanathi. Mina ngekubuka kwami letinto kungathi dingabosuka naleminyaka yahulumeni.
Inhlangano yabosomabhizinisi iBusiness Eswatini ithi kuqhutshelwa yembili kwekucala kwalolu hlelo kuyinkhomba yokuthi iEswatini Revenue Service iyasebenzisana nabosomabhizinisi bakuleli njengoba bebacelile ukufundziswa kabanti ngalendlela lensha yekubhadala umthelo. Embikweni lothunyelelwe betindzaba umphathi walenhlangano nathi Dlamini uthi batawubakhuthata abosomabhizinisi babo ukuthi bakukhuthalele kufundza ngalolu hlelo lolusha. Etindzabeni Eswatini TV kubika Nelson Ngamandla ngina Smuva Shongwe ezulwini.
Luhlangothile litawusita emaswati ngetemtsetfo ngaphandle kwekukhipha imali Eswatini Legal Aid lisebenta kwenabisa tindzaba temtsetfo even lonke kute lonke eliswati likhone kumeleleka tinkantolo lokhu kuvetwe ngumcondzisi waloluhlangothi Lungile Magagula.
Lelibandla yeSwatini Legal Aid lasukumiswa ngalokusemthethweni ngenyanga yengci kulomnyaka kude kutositakala emaswati ngetemtsetfo ngaphandle kwekukhipha imali njengoba litiko letemtsetfo nemtsetfosisekelo liyaveta ukuthi emaswati lange-58 ekhulwini 58% akakhoni kumeleleka etinkantolo ngenxa yetizatfu letahlukene kufaka ekhatsi kubate kahle timali tebameli. Umcondzisi walelibandla Lungile Magagula uyachaza ukuthi emaswati angagadza nini kumeleleka etinkantolo.
Yekucala yindzaba ye-legal information and awareness losho ukuthi lokuthi nje sinikete sive lwati nekuthi nje badingeka ukuthi selikhona lihlangothi phela leSwatini Legal Aid. Sibese ke sesiba nayo uhlangothi lekululeka nekuthi sikhombe bantfu indlela ukuthi bangalithola phi isito nabanenkinga lesithi legal advice and referral. Bese sekuba nendzaba ye-mediation lapho sihlanganisa khona lokhanzakala ukuthi banetinkinga. Legcina ke ngilolu sito lelifunwa ngemaswati kakhulu lesithi yi-legal assistance lefaka kumelela abantu etinkantolo. Lelo ke sisengafiki ekuthenini sisite sive ngalo ukuthi sisemele umthetho phela lotawusilawula kahle usichazele kuphindze futhi kube nako nekuchitshelwa kwemthetho webameli Legal Practitioners Act lekhona kuze ukuthi kukhonakale ukuthi bameli labachamuka ehhovisi lahulumende labangachamuki mhlawumbe etinkampanini tebameli bakhone ukuthi bamelele bantu.
Ngakulokunye lelibandla legal aid liyachubeka nokubamba imihlangano netinhlangothi letahlukene letitsinsekako kutemtsetfo kude eminyakeni lotako emaswati aqale ukutfola lusito lokumeleleka etinkantolo. Etindzabeni yeSwatini TV kubika Samkelisiwe Khoza naSmuva Shongwe eMpabane.
Live laseSwatini libe emtsibi munye nemave kubheni lusuku lwetekuchudzelana emhlabeni iWorld Competition Day. Kanti lolu suku ludlala indzima lenkhulu ekutheni tinhlangothi letahlukene temnotfo tichudzelane ngendlela lefanele.
Umphathi welibandla letekuchudzelana yeSwatini Competition Commission Muzi Dlamini uthi kugubha lolu suku kukhutsata kuchudzelana lokungeko etinhlangothini letinengi letitsinsekako etindzabeni temnotfo.
Siqubulo salonyaka sithi imigomo yetekuchudzelana lolubuke tinhlangothi tsite temnotfo letitsinza kuphila nenhlalakahle tebantfu emhlabeni wonke. Letinhlangothi tifaka ekhatsi temitsi, tekulima, tekuchumana, tetimali netekutsengiselana pheceleti retail and wholesale. Imigomo ke yekuchudzelana ibonakala inelichaza lelikhulu lelingadlala ekutheneni letinhlangothi temnotfo tilwe nebusweti eveni. Ngekuthi leti nhlangothi nguleto letingakha ematfuba ekucala emabhizinisi tiphindze takhe nemisebenzi kude emaswati akhone kutiphilisa.
Leli bandla-ke lithi liyatithola netikhalo ngetinkampani tsite lekuyintfo lebayisebentako balibandla kuteke kutsi wonke umuntu anetiseke agculiseke kuchudzelana kube ngilokungekho eSwatini. Endzabeni ngengiyani Msibi ngiNanosile Sithole eMbabane.
Basolwa labasihlanu abaqhamuka eveni lase-South Africa nase-Kenya bavele embi kwenkantolo yamanje yenhlangano babekwe-ke emacala lamane kuntshontsha imali lengu-19,100 emalangeni etitolo letahlukene edolobheni yenhlangano.
Ecaleni lekucala kuthiwa labasolwa beba imali lengu-6,000 emalangeni esitolo sase-Jumbo Wholesalers. Ecaleni lesibili kuthiwa labasolwa beba imali lengu-6,000 emalangeni esitolo sase-Wozani Supermarket. Ecaleni lesithathu kuthiwa labasolwa beba imali lengu-4,700 emalangeni esitolo sase-Buffalo Cash and Carry. Kanti ecaleni lesine kuthiwa labasolwa beba imali lengu-2,400 emalangeni esitolo sase-Nkonyeni Spar Matfute nase-Sdvokotvo. Ngekusho kwemaphepha senkantolo labasolwa benda onke lamacala mhla ka-1 kule nyanga lesetulu. Umseshi waleli cala etfula bufakazi yenkantolo uthi bavelile kuto tonke letitolo lapho lobucala benteke khona bacela kubona i-CCTV footage yaletitolo ngekwehlukana. Lo mseshi uthi labakunakile kuletitfombe temakhamera etitolo kutsi labasolwa bebasebentisa indlela yinye kuganga kuto tonke letitolo. Ngekusho kwafakazi wembuso wesithathu kuleli cala umsolwa yokucala wacela ishintshi ethilini wayithatha ngesandla yonke imali lebeyisethilini. Lo fakazi uthi waphindze wayithatha le mali esandleni salomsolwa. Lo fakazi ucubeka uthi ngesikhathi sekubala imali ntsambama babese batfola ukuthi iyashoda. Inkantolo ibese ithi labasolwa batawuve bagcinwe ngumnyango loconsisa timilo netigwegwe. Kanti batawubuya inkantolo mhla ka-6 kule nyanga lesetulu kutocubeka naleli cala. Lobika-ke tindzabeni te-Eswatini TV nguthando kuhle Mdluli ngisenhlangano.
Temdlalo sekadvansene emacembu lamane lokubhekeka ukuthi atfolane kuma-semi-finals endzebe yeNgwenyama Cup ema-Regional Champions kule mpelasonto. iYoung Lovers itawutfolana eTulu neNyamane Classic bese iMalahleni itfolana eTulu neXolani United. Lemidlalo itawudlalelwa enkundleni yasemkhuzweni ngemgcibelo kuleli viki. Kanti-ke kutawuba ngo-10 emalangeni kubukela lemidlalo lemibili.
Sekadvansene amacembu lamane laboshampiyoni benzebe yeNgwenyama Cup kuto tifundza letine telive laseSwatini lekubhekeke ukuthi achubekele esigabeni sema-semifinals iNgwenyama Regional Champions kule mpelasonto. Emhlanganweni nebetindzaba eSgwaca House licembu leYoung Lovers lidvonsene neNyamane Classic bese-ke kulomnye umdlalo iMalahleni United idvonsene neXolani United. Le midlalo lemibili yema-semifinals kuwo ema-champions etifundza itawudlalwa ngemgcibelo enkundleni yasemkhuzweni lapho khona kutawubita 10 emalangeni kubukela lamacembu. Sihlalo welikomiti lelibuke kudlalisa ibhola kulenzebe Comfort Shongwe ukhumbute amacembu kanye nebalandzeli ukuthi iNgwenyama Cup ihambisa imbili inhlonipho kanye ke nakutiphatsa kahle.
Le tournament lena nawubuka kahle in a nutshell it's just sihloniphaneni wherever we are doing. Ngisho emgwaqweni sihloniphaneni sihloniphene timpawu temgwaqo at all times so that we reduce semi-accidents. Inkulu ke le tournament le sikhumbule lokho ukuthi iphindze ibe ne-culture le khona naloko kusho ukuthi asihlangane sibe banengi lesikhona la sibonane sitane wherever la sikhona khona.
Amacembu lamabili atawuhamba embili kubhekeke ukuthi atfolane kumancamu lakutawumenyetelwa kulamalanga latako ukuthi ingabe kuyawuba nginini. Etindzabeni temidlalo ngingugiyani Msibi umbiko uhlanganiswe nguFabrice Msonera eSgwaca House eMbabane.
Melusi Dlamini lodlalisa i-Japan Karate lophindze abe sekomitini lelibuke kudlalisa lo mdlalo ngaphansi kwenhlangano leyatiwa ngekwekuthi yi-Eswatini Japan Karate. Uthi likomiti lelisha leliphetse lenhlangano libuke kutfutfukisa lo mdlalo kuto tonkhe tifundza telive liphindze litfole litfuba lekuchumana kanye naletinye tinhlangano letisesifundзeni lesendansini nelibhekati le-Afrika. Dlamini bekakhuluma ngesikhatsi lenhlangano idlalisa imidlalo yayo kule mphela-sonto lephelile.
Nize ngala so siphasi kakhulu sizama nje ke ngalokuthi lekomiti leli lisha ioffice lena nje activity yalo yecala lingene office so sizama nyalo ngato tonke tindlela ukuthi silende siyendlela obesetula kakhulu bese camene so faka onke la regions ala kangwane kuze sifike lapho ukuthi kufuna ukuthi sikhona kunama gradings sibe nama instructors lenene beta ukhona uhambisa karate kulama regions lesifuna nekuthi ke nathi selikomiti kufanele ukuthi sihambe onke lama regions si-advertise lo mdlalo kungabi ukuthi mhlawumbe abantu bathi ukuthi karate yakulwa kuphela no kuningi lokukhona ikarate kwendawo emtebeni wemuntu nasemawini as a whole. I-Japan karate ihluke ngalokuthi yona most of ima-techniques akhona i-semi-contact so lamanye ama-associations basebenza full contact. Nangikhuluma nge-semi-contact ngikhuluma ngekuthi sine nasenda lama-exchange of ama-blows. Umuntu uyamshaya phansi, umuntu uyambamba umbhebhe umuyise phansi, noma umuntu uyamshaya ebusweni ngesibhakela. So-ke lamanye ama-associations akakwendi lokho. Kwenda ukuthi bebona kwehluke lokho.
Kwalomuhle tingawo-ke tesiswati talomuhla sesitawumela tesingisi emuva-ke kwa 30 minutes kulesikhathi sanyalo sitawuthatha simo selitulo sibahlole emakethe.
Asibize sinemukele sikuvusela nawo losanza kusivulela umhlaba wonke sologubha emalanga lalishumi nesithupha kwanzisa lwati ngehlukumeteka ngetebulili 16 days of activism against gender based violence nathi lapha ekhaya Eswatini solo siyachubeka njengebambisana netinhlangothi letitsinzekako kwanzisa lwati ngalo lolu tsaba lolu kanti ke ngikusho nje kombiko wenhlangano UNFPA yeminyaka wa 2020 nge-gender based violence emaveni langu-7 in Eastern Southern Africa. About 20% people aged 15 to 24 years reported that they had experienced sexual violence. Lo mbiko kovete uchube kovete nekokuthi bomake kanye nemantfombatane labakhubatekile are estimated to be up to 10 times more likely to experience sexual violence. I am joined by the executive director osuka enhlanganweni ikwakha indvodza Sone Dlamini kukhuluma nje kabanti ngato tindzaba mhlambe letivetwa bobabe nabahlangene nabo kusaxoxiswana ukuthi ingabe sifika lapha nje sifika kanjani nekuva nje tinkinga nabo bobabe lababhekana nato ngoba kuyavela nokuthi nabo babobabe bayahlukubeteka. Sivusele Nkosi siyabonga ngosipenathi namhla ekseni. I think nje kungaba singangeni nje kuyo discussions noma ke ama dialogues leniyeni benawo nabobabe kanye nebafana. I think kungaba kuva nje the symbolic meaning lebomcoka nje balo 16 days kusuke laphi sesifika la isikhona khona nje lokuthi say commemorate globally.
Sasele thuba sivusele onke amaswati labukela umsakato we-Eswatini TV. Njengoba sekachazile nginguSonic Dlamini longu mahlale sangweni kwakha indvodza kwakha indvodza inhlangano letimele leyaqalwa umnyaka wa 2012 ibukeke ukukhulumisa tindzaba temalungelo ensha bobabe nebafana lesikukhuthatha kakhulu thina njengokuthi bobabe abadlali nalo lichaza thide sengiphendula lo mbuto wakho le lusuku lo le 16 days of activism ifika ekubeni in Dominican Republic lapho kwabulawa khona bomake labathathu lebebalwela emalungelo ukuthi kuvikeleke ukuthi kungabi khona kuhlukubeteka kwabomake nebantwana. Kwase kufika lapho kwase kuthiwa awu sekugcina ke namhlabuhlangene so yayithatha lendzaba lena kepha nje yaqala in the 1960s in Dominican Republic and then ke bathi ke nase bashona kwabonakala ukuthi awu labo make bebadlala ichaza lemcoka ekulweleni emalungelo ebantu nemhlaba wonke waso uyayibona ukuthi cha into lokufanele ukuthi yendeke lebe solo ithatheleka phasi. Eswatini ke nathi sawungenela ke lo mgomo ukuthi nathi siyawuhlangana nalo wonke umhlaba si commemorate le 16 days of activism lecala njalo mhla ka 25 November iyawuphela nakumhla ka 10 December.
Ngalokuthi ke Nkosi vele sihlala sibona imibiko ukuthi bobabe ngibona labahlukubeta bomake kanti nabo bakhona bobabe lokhanze ukuthi bayahlukubeteka nani saxoxisana nabo babe nje mhlambe kule ma community visits community discussions noma dialogues bavetela ukuthi kuba yini letinkinga because mhlambe kuba yi-upbringing lokuthi mhlambe leyo babe loyo noma loyo bhutulo noma lumvulo lomusha bekahlukubeteka ekhaya wabona kuhlukubeteka make wakhe naye abuser ngibaba wakhe kuba yini nje mhlambe itinkinga labativetako ezinisaxoxisana nabo.
Kwekuqala nje kungaba kuvuma vele ukuthi esikhathini lesiningi kuba kungilabo make la uthola ukuthi ngibola bangema victims of violence kungaba kushaywa noma ke kuphatheka kabi noma kuhlukubeteka nje lokuthide ngingako nje ama statements noma i-research lekhona kangwane ithi 1 in 3 women has been exposed to especially sexual violence. So singwakha indvodza siyakwati lokuthi emadvodza nawo angilamanye lahlukubeteka sibena lelithuba kulesi sixoxisane nawo njengoba sivamisa kukwenda inhlanganweni tethu kuma chapters ethu la sikhuluma nabo sixoxisana nje ukuthi ingabe bona bangadlala chaza lithini sikhathi lesiningi bayakuveta ukuthi yebo vele ngaloko sibona bakhule babona make ekhaya ashayo kanti nabo nje eveni bakhule bathi ukuthi umntwana ukhuliswa ngekushaya bathi bona ukuthi kuze usolve inkinga kufuna ukuthi ushaye umuntu nalana ke kuma relationships kugcina sekukanjalo uma abantu bangasavani ngangasolinye ukhanze ukuthi sebathi bobabe hayi kungcono ukuthi ngimshaye nabo labo babe bayashaywa bashaya bomake asikuvete lokho kuyavela nje nasicoca nabo sekuthi ke bona bayesaba kubika ngobe sathi ukuthi phela indvodza ikhulisa ukuthi indvodza akayikhali indvodza lethi ishaya ngumfati lana kithi bekulichilo bekungakusiyo info leyatiwako so isikhathi lesiningi amadvodza bese ayesaba lokuvela ukuthi yathi mina lekhaya makwakami noma ke lo sisi lengisazanaye uneludlame uyashayana bese bayesaba lokubika kepha nje siyabakhuthata ukuthi nabo bavele babike ukuze sitoba nato leti nombolo ukuthi bona banganani labahlukubetekile ngalolu hlobo lokuhlukubeteka.
So nanisachubeka nje mhlambe nikhulumisana nje Nkosi baveta ukuthi le anger isukuqhamukaphi mhlambe nje yini lesheshi bakwatise kuthi angaze nje abeke umflo msikati isandla amshaye noma amkhulumise kabi kusuke laphi apart from lokuthi mhlambe labanye basuke bakubone mhlambe kubabe babo bakubone ekhaya kuba yini nje bayakhona ilokusho lokuthi sengikwade ngisheshe ngikwade vele kubangwa yini bayakuveta indoko.
Ngicabanga ukuthi indlela lesikhuliseke ngayo semadvodza njengoba ngishilo ukuthi emadvodza ngibantu lokwatiwa ukuthi abesabi bantu labatiwa ukuthi bona emotions bede kahle babantu nje labavele violent isikhathi lesiningi lokho sibabona bangazi bami labakwatile ngilokuthi bomake nabo indvodza yona isebenzisa emandla isikhathi lesiningi kanti bomake bona badlale ngekhathi emphefumulweni nasemoyeni wendvodza lese ukhanza ukuthi seyidivela ungazi ukuthi seyilahlekelwa sithunzi umuntu wena akalahlekelwa sithunzi uyazama kwenda ngayo yonke indlela ukuthi sithunzi sakhe sibuyele kubuyela kwesithunzi ke endvodzeni kuphakamisa isandla sikhathi lesiningi kungako nje siye sikhanze ukuthi awu nemajaha emangweni uthi na uthi uyachaza uthi hey lo akamake uyangishaya bathi hawu ngeke ushaya ngumfati indvodza ungakuzidlakela ungaka ngeke ngeke kuvumele lokho indvodza lenjani shothi uweak noma vela awusiyi indvodza noma kwathi indvodza amfati so ke babalekela tonke lento leto so ikhona le peer pressure ikhona nje nale culture vele ukuthi nje indvodza ayishaya ngumfati ke seyikhona ke nalokuthi nje vele emadvodza nje ngesikwakhona analo loludlame kepha sikhathi lesiningi
mhlambe ma friendships ma siblings now ayasifaka sandla ekuthenini hawu usongamyekela nje akudisrespect kanjalo empike bantu so naloko kuyawufaka lo mcombe ukuthi angisukume ngindvodza nami ngivikele ngimshaya.
Yes kuyawufaka lo mcondo lo naloku nje lendlela okhuliseke ngayo ukuthi phela ngabe usolubona babe akwenda ekhaya nawe na usuyaphikisa babe avele akushaye ngenhlanekela ukukhanza sekuyinto le normal ukuthi nawe ungayenda.
So ngalokho ke Nkosi vele sisebenzisana mhlambe nje solo sifuna nje kwanzisa lwati solo sifuna ukuthi iphele le violence ngabe nike nibe nawe ema session la kupho khona bese emva kokuthi senikuvile konke lokho ma challenges nabo lababhekene nawo eba khona ini session lapho nicocisana nabo babe ukuthi okay siyadivide ikhaloteni siyava ama challenges enu ingabe kenyala ama solutions aloku kutibamba kule anger niyakhona nibakhulumisa mhlambe nihambe nama psychologists la takhona kubakhulumisa kuza manje ukuthi bakhona ukwehlisa laka
siba nawo sikhathi lesiningi ema dialogues ema community dialogues nabo bobabe kanye nensha la sicocisana khona ngatwa lezi indzaba ngoba umgomo wethu kuthi sicethe lonke luhlobo lobuhlangudlangu nokuphathana kabi kwebantu nokungahloniphi nje lilungela lomunye umuntu akukhathalekile ukuthi ungumake ungisisi ungibhudi noma ungibabe nekuthi ke sigaba sakho sithini emangweni sikhathi lesiningi bobabe bathi bona lokubakhalisako ngilokuthi kunale expectation yokuthi bangama providers so nangabe so abuser financially lobabe uva ungazi ukuthi naye lilungu lakhe seliyanyatheleka kuye kwendeke nje uthola ukuthi emakhaya bobabe bakhala ngokuthi make uyasebenza naye baba uyasebenza ke cha make akafuni yena kuthenga tindvo dala khaya imali eningi lesemenda kwa la khaya yamake yababe yamake nje kwenta tindvo netidzingo letibukene naye make akhohlwe ngelikhaya nebantwana kanzi-ke nalabo basengathathani ukhanza ukuthi seyikhona le expectation ikakhulu kubantu abesikole uthola ukuthi sebatikhanza bathanzana bobaba labadzala nabobaba labasebentako laba-influential emangweni nalaba-famous nangathi pheceleti uthola ukuthi kumbe bahlabeleli badlali bebhola noma-ke bosomabhizinisi noma-ke nangabe kulesi sikhathi uthola ukuthi abantu abesikole bathanzana baholeli ngoba abantu abahlala banemali lethu dala. Bese ke nasekunale expectation yokuthi somnikile le mali kubese kubona le expectation futhi ukuthi phela naye akufuna naye akunike lokho losithite lokufuna nawe ukugadzile kuye ukuthi kumbe achubeke akuthanze akuhloniphe uma ngasakuhloniphi bese sova ngathi wena ungamshaya. Lesiye sikukhuthateke as isolution ukuthi akukhulunyiswa neni sihloniphane ukhumbule ukuthi wonke umuntu ungumuntu ngekwendalo umuntu waNkulunkulu uphinze abe ngumntwana nemuntu nawe uyindvodza umntwana nemuntu unesithundi njengokudala nguNkulunkulu lesikukhuthataka ukuthi nangabe uyeva ukuthi sowukwatile tikhona tinhlangano la ungaya khona uvete khona kukwata kwakho banihlanganisa lo mlolo senikwatelene ukuze kunciphe lobudlwangudlwangu. Siye sibe nawo ke ama psychologists nje thine ngekusebenza kwethu labakhulumisako ngoba ukuthi nasukwatile indlela elula ukuthi wente kanjani kadzeni siyathi nje ukuthi ngesiswati bekathi babe naseva ukuthi so uyathukuthela nangabe kumbe bayakhuluma namake avele athathe lizembe noma leso sicelemba ahambe ayogawula lihlahla nakabuya lapha abuya sowudziniwe acele emandi anathi aphumule kuye kube uthola ukuthi ngasesikhathi kuba kanjalo kuba ke akhona lapho uthola ukuthi angeke uwaphuma nje na uhlala mbabane ungaphuma uye kuphi uyogawula kuphi ngilapho uthola le violence seyiningi abantu sebayagwazana bayashayana bayadubulana kwenteka lokwanalokwa lobudlwangudlwangu kuvalelekile abantu sebahlala etinzawini letivalelekile sekude nemaguma nemasango tsineke nasihlangene nalabo babe sizama kubuyisa leli sango lapho emadvodza bekahlala khona akhulumise tinkinga nokuphuma netisombululo nje tinkinga tikhona emakhaya etimpilweni tabo nasemangweni nje nasikhuluma kumbe kuphinze kuchubekele na7 ukuthi ngabe tinkinga etikhona eveni tihamba tifike phi yini ichaza lesingalidlala siyakukhutsata ke ukuthi majaha nabo babe nangabe nabo bahlukubetekile akhona phela amaphoyisa nangabe make sokushayile nangabe futhi kumbe ukhona lothethe imali yakho wangasayibuyisi kumbe bekanende sethembiso nako lokho ngekwemithetho kubucala lokufana uwebile ngathi nge-false pretense kuleyo muntu loyo asiwakhutsati nje ikakhulu sine singiwakha indvodza ema-transactional relationships lendekako sifuna ukuthi abantu bathandzane ngalokungiko ngokwekukholwa nangokwendalo hayi ukuthi umuntu uthanza umuntu ngoba kumbe nginemali yini namhla noma kumbe lothi ngifamous cha asifuni lo sikube kanjalo siphinzeke sikhulumise tindzaba ngoba lokuhlukubetana akugcini nje lapho kuphinze kufaka ekhathi tindzaba tetempilo nangabe lona make sekahlukubetekile boba besikhathi lesiningi tindzaba tabo tetempilo abatikhulumi ikakhulu umcondo nekulimala kwengcondo kwemphefumulo kungilapho ke ema psychologists ethu bese eta khona azame kubakhulumisa for i-mental health well-being yendvodza kuze atokhona kuba calm akhona nekuthi nje understand ukuthi yena i-anger management angayiyenda kanjani kuze anciphise ukuthi ikhaza sekashaya noma abeke umuntu sandla.
Okay. So ngalokho sivele ninhlangano nibuka kakhulu vele emadvodza nikhulumisana nawo emadvodza nitsethe emadvodza kukhona amanye ama-initiatives lenwendako apart from lama community visits community dialogues kukhona ama-initiatives ngakhumbula ukuthi benemsebenzi lobitwa ngokuthi ngibabe lokucotfwa ekuzama nje ukukhuthata ababe ukuthi abe ngibabe lokucotfwa ekhaya ingabe leyo program leyo noma initiative leyo sekhona yini ihamba kanjani bayithokodela nibobaba
bayithokotela kakhulu ngiyabonga umsakathi lokuthi ukuvete lokho sikhathi lesiningi siyaba nayo vele lama sessions bese banje nabo Fatherhood Friday kulubabe loqotho lesikukhuthatako ukuthi labo babe nabo abadlale lichaza tsite etimpilweni tabantu ababo Utawati nje isikhathi lesiningi ukuthi ukukhula nekutalwa kwemntwana kuvamise kushiwa etandleni tamake. Babe uthi angabona athi make sowukhulele bese soyambalekela kanti-ke asikukhuthadi lokho ngobe ngiko lo kulimata labantwana kusukela asesemncane abebede luthando lwababe abebede kwemukeleka ekhaya kubo nakahlula kumukeleka ekhaya kubo soyamukelwa ngibanike kulapho sothola ukuthi soyawungena ke emahlathini sojoyina nabo abantwana lesisinya namhla ngema K9 labanye ngama Benjamin uzama kufuna ibelonging lapho angadivela naye emukelekile lapho naye angakhuluma khona nalamanye amadvodza amhloniphe sikhutsata nje bobabe ukuthi badlala ichaza lelitsite ekukhuliseni kwemntwana kuze nemntwana atokhona amhloniphe sikhutsata ukuthi babe nakukhulunywa indzaba tekufunza akabe khona phela babe naye abonakala emhlanganweni wesikolo akabe khona babe atolanza ireport akabe khona babe nakuhlangene bothisha nebatali atova ukuthi umntwana wakhe wenda kanjani akabe khona babe nakabe ngabe ukhona kumbe ekhaya alende lithuba ukuthi asite umntwana ngema homework amsite nesina ngabe kuyodlala ema sports abe khona ayombukela umntwana wakhe noma ngabe umntwana entombatana noma umntwana emfana bayaludzinga loluthando lolufana nalolo bayadzinga kubona abatali babo baba encourage babashayela tandla beme on the sidelines nangabe kudlalwa ema sports noma ke kuyohlatshelelwa ikakhulu la kanje kugcwele ama choral akabe khona nje babe noma kumikiswa abantwana emhlangeni bantwana bentombatana awubona cha umntwana ke solo uphetheke kahle solo ukahle le kangwane lapho kunemkhosi khona naye make nangabe kusikhathi semajaha akaye babe ahambe naye umntwana wakhe kanjalo namake nasiye sizame ukuthi bafake lidlaza lelitsite nasikhuluma ngetindzaba tempilo akabe khona phela nababe ambone umntwana wakhe atokhona ukuthi umntwana akhone ukukhuluma asho ukuthi namhla babe ngiphethwe sisu namhla ngiphethwe inhloko angiphethwe yini thine nje insha sikhathi lesiningi thina bafana siyatifunzela tinto bobabe abavamisi ukukhuluma ngetindzaba lesingathi pheceleti the sexuality nabo consent ukuthi nangabe nje usoma intombatana nangabe intombatana ithi ayifuni kusho ukuthini lokho nangabe lokuthi iyafuna kusho ukuthini nelilungelo lakho lihamba ligcinephi nangabe intombatana seyikuganile tinto tonke leti lebesingakatitholi ngaphambilini sesiyadikhutsata kenyalo ukuthi emadvodza atikhulumise abuyele esangweni akhona ukukhuluma abantu ababo kanjalo futhi nabo babe ababakhulumisa abantwana bemantombatana ukuthi cha phela ntombi lokusoyintombi nje kusho ukuthi sotawuhlangana nemajaha akusome kukusoma kuyinto lekhomba ukuthi sowukhulile nekusilive leyakubuka kepha akusho ukuthi sale uhamba utihlaphatisa ugane bobabe labadzala naka imfundo yakho unakele ikusasa lakho amtshele babe ukuthi mntwana nami umuhle ngiyakuthanza yabona namake kanjalo nemntwana yakhe lomduna amtshele ukuthi mntwana nami umuhle ngiyakuthanza angathi ikhanza sekawele etandleni tabomake labafuna kuganga ngebantwana labancane kwendeke nathi into sesithi namhlabo SOTV labanye abantwana ukhanza ukuthi sebayemithisa babancane ukuthi abakafunziseki labanye bayemitha ngalothi balahlekelwe lithando ekhaya labanye bahamba bagijima bafuna imali ngalothi kude lokukhulumiseka ekhaya uyesaba nje ukucela nje kucela imali yepenseli kubabe umntwana ngothi babe la khaya silwane
so ngifuna ukubuza nje ngokuthi ingabe ninato inhlelo mhlambe lentendako ku traditional media na social media kuzama nje ukupromote men's involvement in the prevention of GBV.
Siyatikhulumisa kakhulu letindzaba leto sinawo lama campaigns lesiwenda ka social media la sifaka khona ema message la target yona insha bobabe nabo bonke nje bantfu labathuna event siphinze sibe nako lokuthi siye etindzaweni letitsite la sisebenzisana nabo insha labo labangasebenzi ngawubekisa nje siye sibazame kubafundzisa emakhono ukuthi phela cha nabo ababe nemakhono latsite kuze batokhona abanekuphila bangadikhanzi sebangenelwe ngumoya wokuthi kumbe kufuna sale babagebengu noma bawugcekeza sale babamba inkunzi siyakukhutsata nekuthi ke sihambise lonke luhlobo le message lekhona njengoba ngichazile siyathi khulumisa tindzaba te health tetempilo siyatikhulumisa tindzaba titsakamiva siyatikhulumisa tindzaba takho nje ukuthi na ulijaha utiphatsa kanjani kuze uphile ube nelikusasa ikakhulu njengoba namhla sokwagcwala tifo letifana nabo HIV nabo AIDS siyatikhulumisa futhi indzaba letifaka ekhatsi tebulili ikakhulu nasikhulumisa tifo letihambelana netitfo tangasense singathi phecelezi sexual reproductive health yemadvodza ukuthi nawo phela awathi akhona ukuthi ati ukuthi ayohlola ukuthi cha mine ngisesekahle ngisesephilile sitfo sami sisekahle nami nje ngiseselijaha ngisesekahle ukuthi nganyelanga ngoba ngibabe lophilile nalocotho siphinze sikhulumise ke nato letindzaba tebudlangudlangu ukuthi phela na ulijaha akusho ukuthi ngalokuthi wena usichwaka sekufuna ukuthi uhambe ulwa noma ususa ulwa nebantu asikukuthathi nje ikakhulu nakulokuvamise kwenteka emabus rank uthola ukuthi seba hohoza abantwana bosisi egameni lesibagcoke kanjani ngiloyo naloyo unelungelo lokuthi umtimba wakhe uhlonipha kanjani unelungana ukuthi unamuhla ufise ukuthi yena angavela akanjani emangweni ngendlela agcoke ngayo asikukuthathi kepha ukuthi bese soba singathi phecelezi excessive in showing off umtimba wakho na utihlonipha nje ulijaha na utihlonipha ungisisi siyakukhuthatha lokuthi nabo babahloniphe amkhona kumcompliment cha sisi namhla ugcoke kahle nangabe futhi abona athi sisi ngathi uhleli kabi noma awugcoki kahle angaya akhulume naye kahle athi yes ungazi ukuthi lana soveta sitwa semtimba lokungafanele sibonwe ngunoma ngangibani ubo tinaka phana ugcoka kuleto tinfo leto lokuthiwa athi ekhaya babe ngabe uyadenda nakaphuma nje umntwana athi hawu sisi ungaphuma ugcoke kanjena silita uthini live batawuthini esontweni kona bangani bakho bathini bothishela bakho batawuthini so akusiyo nje indzaba yethu sodwa siyakukhuthaza nasetikolweni siyakhulumisana nabothishela ukuthi nabo bakuvete lokho siphinze sizame nokukhulumisana netiphatsimandla tikhona eveni ikakhulu tikhulu ukuthi phela tikhulumise tindzaba leti kuze ukuthi kunciphe so kuningi nje velele lesikwendako nasemaradiweni siyavela nasemaphepheni siyabhala sizame ukukhuthaza impilo lengiyona lecotho
kugcina nje Nkosi Kafishane kuvela ukuthi siyadibona letinye tinhlangano solo tiyacela lokuthi uhulumende sala akubeka kube sobala declare ukuthi vele iGBV yi national disaster engavele mhlambe kuva nini ezikwakha invota engabe ukuthi sekuthiwa vele iGBV seyibekiwe ukuthi yi national disaster engabe kwanisita kanganani vele live lokho
live kungalisita kakhulu mina nje ngiphinze ngibe ngusihlalo we-gender consortium siyatikhulumisa letindzaba kaningi nje sicela kuhulumende ukuthi asakayibukete lendzaba ayithathe ngemandla lawasebenzisa nakuthathwa i-HIV nayideclare ukuthi nayo is an emergency and a national disaster so siyacela nje kuhulumende ukuthi vele akubukisise live liyalahlekelwa nakufa abantu liyalahlekelwa nakugula abantu sebashaywe balimele balala etibhedlela lengayo abantu bakhona emangweni bayasita bayalakha live liya embile singikwakha indvodza singakukhuthaza singakujabulela because sithemba ukuthi kungalinciphisa lelizinga lanabudlangudlangu lwaseBonzile eveni lekubulalana lekushayana nalekugcekelana phasi nekungahloniphi emalungelo ebantu
yavakala sibanga kakhulu Nkosi banathile umhla ihlelo nimbukeli sotivile tinhlelo letendiwa ngokwakha invota kuza manje kunciphisa wona emacala labekwako gender based violence lo sikiwo ke emalanga la 16 kwanzisa lwati ngehlukubetekanga ngetebulile 16 days of activism against gender based violence ayaphetha ke mhla ka 10 December umkhankaso lona lokuqala 25 November uphetha nga 10 December asibahlolete market estabweni etindzabade singisi.
We at Eswatini Television Authority are committed to observing the Eswatini Communication Commission's Broadcasting Code of Conduct.
Under the code, we are committed to broadcast news that is current, free from hate speech, accurate, balanced, and fair.
From politics to business, health, agriculture, courts,
and global news. We bring you the latest updates as they happen, when they happen.
We cover all the sporting codes from the football pitch to the chessboards.
This is Eswatini TV News.
Welcome back. This is the news at 7. It is important for the National Archives to have a response plan for natural disasters. The Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Information, Communication and Technology, Phesheya Dube, said this when he opened the validation workshop for the development of Archives Disaster Management Plan at Happy Valley Hotel, Eswatini.
Climate change continues to pose a challenge for different sectors, prompting them to find innovative ways in their line of work. The National Archives is developing a disaster preparedness plan, which the Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Information, Communication and Technology, Phesheya Dube, says is a very important tool in this era.
The process of developing a disaster management plan requires collective effort from all relevant stakeholders, for we each have a part to play. Thus, the Ministry looks forward to your valuable contributions in this meeting, which will validate this draft disaster management plan.
Members of the public have applauded the Ministry of Information, Communication and Technology and the National Archives for their plan. They say the history of the country needs to be preserved and must not be lost when disasters strike, as future generations need it.
Siyadinga ukuthi sati nekuthi nalabanye labaseta emva kwethu badinga imlando welive.
Umlando kufanele ugcinwe kahle uze wendlulele ukuthi ugcinwe digital ngoba tonke intfo nyalo seti digital.
Mina ngikukhanza ngathi kumcoko lokho lokuthi umlando vele kasugcina sitodati ukuthi nawuliswati utati lokuthi ubuya kuphi wekuzabukaphi wekuvelaphi kunani yini lokukhona laveni kunani nani.
Umlando welive umcoka kakhulu kithi siyabonga kakhulu etikweni.
The Principal Secretary has committed to supporting the National Archives as it develops the plan. For Eswatini TV News, Nelson Dlangamandla, Vuminkosi Nzinisa, Ezulwini.
The Ministry of Information, Communication and Technology Principal Secretary Phesheya Dube says Eswatini needs to enhance cybersecurity for the safe use of the internet for all Eswatini. The PS was speaking during a cybersecurity capacity building workshop for law enforcement officers, where he was represented by the Under Secretary Macanjana Mota.
Is aimed at providing law enforcement officers, prosecutors, and members of the judiciary with essential training on cybersecurity fundamentals, the Cybersecurity and Cybercrime Act of 2022, and the handling of digital evidence and prosecution techniques. The meeting was officially opened by the Minister of ICT, PS Phesheya Dube, and he was represented by the US at the ministry.
The need for a resilient and well-informed response to cyber threats cannot be overstated or overemphasized. The workshops we are commencing today aim to equip our dedicated professionals with the knowledge and skills needed to navigate the complexities of cybersecurity effectively.
The Eswatini Communications Commission Chief Executive, who was represented by Tanya D'Souza Butler, also made his remarks.
Cybercrime is a scourge that needs to be uprooted as a matter of urgency. The nation is depending on you as the first full soldiers against such crime.
The International Telecommunications Union Program Officer and Rita Sepoha shared ITU's role in cybersecurity.
Our role, mandate right now, is to ensure that we connect everyone. Wherever the means, wherever you are, we want to make sure that you're connected. And that means giving you secure connectivity, ensuring that it's affordable, and the safety news and meaningful to our people.
The Royal Eswatini Police Service report indicates that in 6 months, Eswatini were defrauded over 177,000 Malangeni through cybercrime. Reporting for Eswatini TV News, I'm Samgal Siwekoza with Zimuva Shongwe, Lobamba.
African countries, including Eswatini, need to strengthen legislations on women and children's rights. This was said by the National Mechanism for Reporting and Follow-up State Reporting Coordinator Nozipho Mazibuko during a stakeholder meeting.
The Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, in collaboration with the Center for Human Rights of the University of Pretoria, hosted a stakeholder meeting on the recommendations under the protocol to the African Charter on Human Rights and People's Rights. The recommendations by the African Commission were shared by the National Mechanism for Reporting and Follow-up State Reporting Coordinator Nozipho Mazibuko.
That relates to the Maputo Protocol. It's on the rights of women, included in the recommendations and on the need for Eswatini to have a legal aid system. We also to work in continuation regarding the scourge that is prevailing, the gender-based violence.
The Center for Human Rights Program Manager Matilda Laseko Poko said cultural practices violate women's rights in Africa.
A big issue that has been flagged, which we find replicating itself in many African countries on the continent, is the question of customary practices and the predominance of patriarchal norms and the extent to which they hinder the implementation of the Maputo Protocol and the rights that are to enable women's equality in our society.
The Kingdom of Eswatini is amongst 44 out of 55 African Union member states who have ratified the Maputo Protocol on women's rights. Reporting for Eswatini TV News, I'm Samgal Siwekoza with Zimuva Shongwe, Zulwini.
The Eswatini Revenue Service has said the business industry will be trained on the Integrated Revenue Administration System, which is scheduled to start in January next year. The Communications Director at DRS, Vusi Dlamini, says the system aims to make payment of tax easier for the business community.
We are changing our current system of submitting income tax returns. A lot of people or a lot of business people will know that the current system is called e-tax. They are going into it through what we call e-tax. So we are changing that, and our intention was to change it 1st of December. But unfortunately, we are not able to do it now on the 1st of December, particularly because we still believe that there's some training that we need to do for business community so that by the time the system starts working, our business community or our clients already understand how it works.
Chairperson of the Federation of Eswatini Business Community in the Hoho region, Johannes Manigela, says it is important for Eswatini Revenue Service to train the business industry on the systems that it plans to introduce. He says if business people fully understand the systems of paying tax, they can be in a better position to comply.
For ukukhulumela ibhizinisi ukuthi siwadi lanathi mina ngekubuka kwami letinto kungathi tingabosuka naleminyaka yahulumeni.
Business Eswatini's Chief Executive Officer Nathi Dlamini says they engaged the Eswatini Revenue Service to delay the introduction of the changes in the payment of tax. In a press statement, the Chief Executive Officer encourages the business community to attend the trainings when they start. For Eswatini TV News, Nelson Dlangamandla, Smuva Shongwe, Ezulwini.
The Eswatini Legal Aid is currently working on legal information awareness for Eswatini. This was said by the Eswatini Legal Aid Director Lungile Makakula when giving an update on the country's legal aid system.
The Eswatini Legal Aid was launched in August this year to increase and ensure access to justice for all Eswatini, as the 2022 Legal Aid Baseline Survey indicates that 58% of Eswatini find the cost of legal representation unaffordable. The Eswatini Legal Aid Director Lungile Makakula says they are working on the decentralization of legal representation information.
We operate under four thematic areas. The first one is legal information and awareness. The second one is advice and referrals. And then the third one is mediation. And then the fourth one is legal assistance, which includes representation. However, I must hasten to state that we are not yet providing legal representation because we are still in the process of enacting a conducive legislative framework, which will include the amendment of the Legal Practitioners Act to allow for attorneys that are not from a firm of attorneys to actually represent those indigent clients who are the target group.
On another note, the Eswatini Legal Aid is currently meeting with stakeholders, discussing measures of ensuring an effective legal aid system in Eswatini. Reporting for Eswatini TV News, I'm Samkal Swekoza with Zimuva Shongwe, Babane.
Eswatini joined the world in commemorating World Competition Day, which is commemorated annually on the 5th of December. This day plays a big role in ensuring fair competition and improving competition on different sectors between consumers.
The Eswatini Competition Commission CEO Mozi Dlamini says the Competition Day is a campaign aimed at ensuring that consumers from across the world realize the potential benefits from an effectively implemented competition regime and also play their role in making competition regimes work worldwide. He says it is critical to focus on competition policy and law issues at an international level that need to be strengthened.
The theme is prioritizing socially sensitive sectors. The theme encourages the prioritization of socially sensitive sectors given the several global crises that have been experienced, which include geopolitical conflicts, pandemics, rising inflation, disruption of food supply chains, and medicines. Now, socially sensitive sectors are those that have high social impact due to their contribution to job creation, income opportunities, health, and subsistence. In view of the importance of socially sensitive sectors, it is critical for competition policy and law to prioritize these sectors in order to create a level playing field to give every business a chance of succeeding. Now, socially sensitive sectors also play a critical role towards supporting the kingdom's economic and development goals, given their importance to the lives of Emaswat.
On another note, he says they have received concerns from companies of a certain company or certain companies that practice unfair competition in the country. He says they are working on resolving that issues as a competition commission. For Eswatini TV News, I'm Kian Msibi with Notsile Stole, Mbabane.
And in international news, Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu on Tuesday ordered a thorough investigation into a weekend military drone attack that killed at least 85 people, including women and children, in northern Kaduna, the latest military assault to hit civilians.
They had been celebrating the Muslim holiday of Maulid, and then the unimaginable happened. The people of Tudunbiri are in mourning after an army drone strike hit their village in the northwest of Nigeria, killing dozens. An attack that the government says was an accident.
The Nigerian army was on a routine mission against terrorists, but unfortunately, some members of the Tudunbiri community were affected.
The search continues for the dead, many of whom were women and children. The country's National Emergency Management Agency also says dozens of the wounded are being treated in hospital. President Bola Tinubu, who's currently attending the COP28 climate summit in Dubai, acknowledged the error and has ordered a full investigation into the tragedy. In a statement, a spokesperson said the head of state describes the incident as very unfortunate, disturbing and painful, expressing indignation and grief over the tragic loss of Nigerian lives. It's another painful chapter in the country's struggle against militia gangs who have long terrorized the northwest, This while the army grapples with a jihadist insurgency in the northeast, and civilians continue to be caught in the crossfire. In January 2017, at least 112 people were killed when a Nigerian fighter jet struck a camp housing 40,000 people displaced by jihadist violence.
Hundreds of Indonesian rescuers were racing on Tuesday to find 10 hikers who went missing after a volcano eruption that killed 13 people. 13 dead hikers were found Monday near the crater of Mount Merapi on the island of Sumatra, with rescue officials announcing 11 deaths the same day and 2 more on Tuesday.
After a long night of searching on the slopes of Mount Merapi, these rescue teams have discovered more victims of the volcanic explosion. But rescue efforts have paused due to hazardous conditions after a second eruption on Monday spewed hot ash 800 meters into the air, followed by continued eruptions throughout Tuesday morning.
The challenges today were that there have been 5 eruptions since early morning. Volcanic ashes falling from the sky also created a visibility issue for the team on the ground.
More than 50 climbers were rescued on Sunday, and more survivors are still being found, like this hiker.
He had sent us a video of his condition and said that he was trapped. Then, at around 6 p.m., he called and he said that he was very thirsty and could no longer walk.
Mount Merapi rises to nearly 2,900 meters and has been active since an eruption in January. Climbers were prohibited within 3 kilometers of the peak, a designated danger zone, due to the unpredictability of its volcanic eruptions. The volcano spewed 3,000 meters of ash on Sunday, sending hot clouds of debris traveling over several kilometers and blanketing surrounding villages. Authorities are urging residents to wear protective gear against volcanic ash.
As Israel pushes its offensive in Gaza further south, hospitals in the city of Khan Yunis are becoming increasingly overwhelmed, with some patients with serious injuries even having to be treated on the floor. The city has been flooded with tens of thousands of displaced civilians fleeing the fighting, and its population is getting denser by the hour as Israeli forces advance.
The word overcrowded is not close to describing the situation in the hospitals of the Gaza Strip. This is Khan Yunis, where tens of thousands have fled to escape Israel's deadly operation against Hamas. As the city gets more dense by the hour, and as the Israeli army gets closer, its Al-Nasser hospital is flooded with wounded patients. People with serious injuries are treated on the floor.
They treat patients properly since the day they get in. May God help these doctors. Given the fact that they are doing their job with the existing lack of medicine, equipment, and tools, frankly, this is the best they can do with the limited resources they have available at the moment.
Some patients have seen their injuries complicated because they could not be treated in time.
We're receiving cases of serious injuries that require amputations, neurosurgery, general surgery. Especially in the past 4 days, most of the admitted cases went into general surgery, neurosurgery, and other cases that were transferred to the European hospital for surgeries.
Conditions in hospitals are described by international organizations as dramatic, and they all denounce attacks on medical facilities and call to protect hospitals and civilians.
We need more support for this people, and we need the war to stop, ceasefire. I wish, because nobody will win in this war.
On top of the wounds, the acute shortage in everything that is vital, starting with clean water, has brought more infectious diseases, respiratory infections, and diarrhea, something doctors don't have the time or means to treat.
The Biden administration on Monday sent Congress an urgent warning about the need to approve tens of billions of dollars in military and economic assistance to Ukraine, saying Kyiv's war effort to defend itself from Russia's invasion may grind to a halt without it.
Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine began in February of 2022, the U.S. Congress has authorized $111 billion in aid for Ukraine. Back in October, President Biden asked lawmakers to approve an additional $61.4 billion, but so far that request has gone unanswered, and the White House says funding for Kyiv could run out by the end of the year.
Congress has to decide whether to continue to support the fight for freedom in Ukraine as part of the 50-nation coalition that President Biden has built, or whether Congress will ignore the lessons we've learned from history and let Putin prevail. It is that simple. It is that stark a choice.
In a stark letter to congressional leaders, the White House's budget director said a failure to approve the funds would, quote, kneecap Ukraine on the battlefield, not only putting at risk the gains Ukraine has made, but increasing the likelihood of Russian military victories, adding, we are out of money and nearly out of time. The new Republican Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, responded to the White House, expressing concerns about a lack of a clear strategy in Ukraine and a lack of accountability to U.S. taxpayers. His conference is refusing to sign on to any additional funding for Kyiv unless Democrats give in to their demands on immigration and increased controls at the U.S.-Mexico border.
It's possible to do. Democrats don't want to do it. All Republicans want to do it. I'm not helping Ukraine until we help ourselves.
Republicans have been widely supportive of military aid for Israel in its war with Hamas, but many have grown weary of backing Kyiv in a war that has dragged on for almost 2 years. With the U.S. presidential election less than a year away, a recent poll by the Associated Press found that almost half of the American public thinks the U.S. is spending too much on aid to Ukraine.
A former U.S. ambassador to Bolivia has been arrested and charged with spying for Cuba over a 40-year span, the Justice Department announced on Monday, detailing a shock betrayal by a suspect who called the United States the enemy.
The U.S. Justice Minister calls it one of the longest-lasting infiltrations of the U.S. government by a foreign agent. Victor Manuel Rocha, a former U.S. diplomat, had been spying on the U.S. for Cuba for over 40 years. The 73-year-old was arrested in Miami on Friday and taken to federal court on Monday. Prosecutors say the case relies heavily on information which Rocha himself admitted to an undercover FBI agent who was tracking him inside the Cuban intelligence service.
Rocha repeatedly referred to the United States as, quote, the enemy. During the undercover, he told the undercover that his efforts to infiltrate the United States government were, quote, meticulous and, quote, very disciplined. And he repeatedly bragged about the significance of his efforts, saying that, quote, what has been done has strengthened the revolution immensely.
Rocha's 20-year career with the U.S. Foreign Service took him to Cuba, Argentina and Bolivia, where he served as a U.S. ambassador from 2000 to 2002. He was also on the White House's National Security Council and an advisor to the commander of the U.S. military Southern Command from 2006 to 2012. Manuel Rocha faces at least 3 criminal counts: conspiracy to act as a foreign agent to defraud the U.S., acting as an illegal agent for a foreign government, and using a passport obtained by false statement. The U.S. government says additional charges may come as the investigation continues, with a detention hearing expected on Wednesday.
Interior Minister James Cleverly arrived in Rwanda on Tuesday to sign a new treaty in an attempt to overcome a court decision to block the government's controversial policy of sending asylum seekers to the East African country.
Time to get control of immigration once and for all. These were the words of the UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak ahead of UK Home Secretary James Cleverly's visit to Rwanda this Tuesday. The aim of his visit is to sign a new agreement with Kigali to send asylum seekers to the African nation. A previous agreement, intended to deter migrants from seeking to reach the UK, was blocked by the country's top court last month.
Rwanda has a poor human rights record. In 2021, the UK government criticised the Rwandan government for extrajudicial killings, deaths in custody, enforced disappearances, and torture.
The court also raised concerns about Rwanda returning migrants to their countries of origin. The UK authorities are now seeking to renegotiate the terms of the deal to include a binding treaty forcing Rwanda not to expel asylum seekers, one of the court's major concerns. They've also discussed passing a law declaring Rwanda a safe destination. Under the previous plan, the migrants could be granted refugee status to stay in Rwanda, or they could apply to settle there on other grounds, or seek asylum in another safe third country. In June 2022, Europe's top human rights courts blocked a first deportation flight. Its ruling was centered on the case of an Iraqi national, but it was enough to ground the entire flight. The head of the UN's refugee agency has described the UK government's Rwanda plan as setting a catastrophic precedent. It's also faced opposition at home, with Labour leader Keir Starmer asking the Prime Minister to answer over the £140 million that have already been spent on the stalled deal.
Uganda is examining a law that would ban the sale of used clothes discarded by Europeans and Americans. These clothes are often purchased from wholesalers and then shipped to African countries. It's a multi-million-dollar business, but despite the popularity, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni said he wanted to ban the imports to boost the growth of local textile industries.
This is Owino, Uganda's biggest market, the place to go for any trader or vendor wanting to do business. You can find everything, including second-hand clothing. Every day, hundreds of customers squeeze through the alleys looking for a bargain.
Most of them, they have a good quality. Compared to those with the new ones in the shops, then that's why we prefer to choose the variety.
But a potential government ban on the sale of used clothing threatens to sever this crucial lifeline for tens of thousands of vendors.
So if they come and ban us, number one, we are going to lose our jobs. Sustain our families is going to be very difficult. Yes.
East Africa imports about an eighth of the world's used clothing, providing jobs for some 355,000 people, harming, according to the government, the domestic textile industry.
So we have cotton. We can produce all these things that we are talking about in the second-hand market here in Uganda. And we have companies that have started producing. If you go to Mbale Industrial Park, if you go to Fine Spinners, Naitiru, and others that are coming on, can be able to replace this thing, rather these second-hand clothings, in a very pretty short time.
President Yoweri Museveni had already tried in the past to ban used clothing with the East African Community Regional Bloc support, but the alliance cracked at the prospect of losing duty-free access to US markets. In the end, Rwanda decided to go it alone. But for Uganda, the fight against second-hand clothing is back on, and the ban could potentially be implemented as early as January.
Now, sports news. The 4 regional champions from the 4 regions have been drawn ahead of the tournament's regional semi-finals games this coming weekend at Kusile Stadium, where it will cost only 10 malangeni to watch the 2 games. Young Lovers will play Nyamane Classic in the first game, while in the second game, Malahleni United will play Xolani United.
The draw has been conducted for the 4 champions from the 4 regions of the country for the 2023-2024 Ngunyama Cup. The 4 champions are Young Lovers, Xolani United, Malahleni United, and Nyamane Classic. In the first game, Young Lovers will take on Nyamane Classic, while in the second encounter, Malahleni United will play Xolani United. It will only cost 10 emalangeni to watch the 2 games at Kusile Stadium this coming weekend. Chairman of the competitions committee in charge of the tournament, Dr. Comfort Shongwe, has once again reminded clubs and supporters that the tournament promotes peace and respect.
The tournament lena na ubuka kahle in a nutshell, it's just hloniphaneni wherever we are doing. Ngisho emgwaqweni sihlonipaneni, sihloniphene timpawu temgwaqo, at all times so that we reduce semi-accidents.
The two semi-final winners will then meet at the Regional Ngwenyama Cup Champions final at a date yet to be announced. Eswatini TV Sports, Mbabane.
Executive member who also happens to be the Swaziland-Japan Karate Association coach, Melusi Dlamini, says the new executive of the association has a mandate of trying to promote the sport from all the 4 regions of the country and be able to compete at Region 5 games in the near future. Dlamini was speaking to Eswatini TV Sports desk in one of the association's events this past weekend.
Siza manje ke ngalokuthi lekomiti leli lisha office lena nje activity yalo yekuqala.
Dlamini says Swaziland Japanese karate is not a new sport in the country, as the association has been existing for a while now in the country. What is new is the new executive that is now in charge of the association. The association is still looking to improve in a very different aspect. At the moment, the association will be recruiting in all 4 regions of the country, but also trying by all means to introduce the sport into school, where they will then at a later stage begin to compete regionally. From there, they will be looking to compete at the Region 5 level and try to dominate as possible.
So ke lamanye ama associations akakwendi lokho kwenda ukuthi bebona bekwehluke lokho.
We've come to the end of our English bulletin. Thank you for staying with us. Let's take a break and leave you with the weather.
Soil and water, a source of life. To ensure sustainable agriculture and support life on Earth, 2 essential elements play a pivotal role: soil and water. Together, they form the lifeblood of our planet. Healthy soil can store a great amount of water, acting as a natural water reservoir. Water journeys through the soil, where it is either stored or drains through, purified by the soil as it goes. This connection between soil and water influences the quality and availability of water worldwide. Consequently, it plays a crucial role in ensuring food security and nutrition. Healthy soil also acts as a powerful carbon sink, mitigating climate change by sequestering atmospheric carbon and locking it into the soil. Soil is likely home to about 59% of the species on Earth, from small microorganisms, fungi and invertebrates. Healthy soil also acts as a very efficient substrate for storing water and can hold up to 25% of its volume as water. Yet unsustainable farming practices not only jeopardize soil and water quality and availability, but also pose threats to human and ecosystem health. Soil erosion and compaction increase the risk of floods, landslides, and sand and dust storms, ultimately impacting our resilience to extreme weather events. In arid regions suffering from extreme heat and water scarcity, soil degradation is exacerbated, sometimes reaching irreversible levels. Additionally, poor irrigation and drainage practices can lead to soil salinization, putting agricultural productivity at risk. What can we do to improve the health and quality of our soil and water? For one, we can raise awareness on the importance of soil and water, advocating their key role in producing sufficient amounts of nutritious food for the world's population, leaving no one behind. We must also promote research and innovation on sustainable soil and water management, such as adapted cultivars, soil moisture monitoring, and water use efficiency. We should support farmers to adapt sustainable soil and water management practices and improve soil fertility. We have to encourage the use of water harvesting techniques. And, most importantly of all, we need to strengthen legal frameworks and institutions for an integrated and sustainable management of soil and water. On this World Soil Day, let's reflect and act on the impact that soil and water have on our lives and ecosystems. May this celebration serve as a reminder to cherish, safeguard, and harness their boundless potential for now and for future generations.
Did you know that more and more children are having trouble seeing things that are at a distance? What are the early signs? How would you know if your child is at risk? And what can you do to protect your child's vision? Here to talk about it is Dr. Stuart Keel. Welcome, Stuart. Let's get started with the early signs that parents, teachers, and grown-ups may be missing.
There may be some early signs of vision loss or vision impairment in children, and they may come in the form of eye rubbing, squinting, closing one eye to see more clearly. It may also be that your child is holding their reading material or devices extremely close to their eyes, or they're moving closer to the TV to see more clearly. It may also come in the form of more general underperformance at school. So if any of these signs are present, then we recommend that the child has a comprehensive eye examination to investigate further.
So Stuart, talk to us about the causes and risk factors for this increasing trend of short-sightedness among kids.
I should first say that if you are short-sighted, then you're certainly not alone. About 20% of the population, or close to 2 billion people globally, have short-sightedness. So there are a number of risk factors. One of the risk factors, unfortunately, we don't have control over, and that is genetics. So if you have a mother or a father, or both, that are short-sighted, then the child is more likely to be short-sighted. But the other group of risk factors are far more interesting and important for us to be aware of, and they're lifestyle factors. So research now strongly shows that intensive near-work activities, so looking at devices for prolonged periods of time, looking at reading material for prolonged periods of time, and also reduced time spent outdoors are risk factors for the development and progression of short-sightedness.
So kids get started really early with digital devices nowadays. Is that one of the reasons why we are seeing this trend? And what can parents do to protect their children's vision?
Yes, that is one of the contributions, but there are a number of things that parents can do, and the most important thing that parents can do is take their child to have a comprehensive eye examination. Even if the child already has glasses, the nature of short-sightedness and long-sightedness in childhood is that the prescription changes over time. So normally the glasses need to be updated every couple of years. Secondly, there are a number of things that parents can do or caregivers can do to protect their child's sight from the development of short-sightedness. And research shows us now that spending 90 minutes outdoors is a protective factor during daylight hours for children developing myopia or short-sightedness. So really encouraging your children to go outside and play is a key message. The second is reducing time spent on these near activities such as device use. And I know this is challenging in the current environment that we are. However, research also shows that this is a very strong risk factor for the development of short-sightedness. And the last one I would like to touch on is if your child wears spectacles, we should be encouraging the child to wear the spectacles as much as possible. There is a common misconception out there that wearing spectacles may make your child's vision worse. However, this is in fact not the case. And wearing the spectacles or glasses makes sure that the child is not straining to see clearly.
Stuart, let's backtrack a little bit. Can you explain how kids playing outside in daylight protects them from developing short-sightedness?
So that's a very good question. There is now very strong evidence that playing outside does protect a child's eyesight from the development of short-sightedness. However, the exact reason why is uncertain. One of the reasons is that more natural light entering the eye ensures that the child's eye develops at a normal rate.
That's fascinating. Thank you very much, Stuart. There you have it. That was Science in 5 today. Until next time then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stick with science.
What do you think the best part of traveling is? Is it the food, or is it the conversation, or is it the sights and sound? If you're ready to explore, we are ready to show you the best way how. We'll give you access to the best luxury getaway sites in the Kingdom of Eswatini, and of course show you vacation sites that suit your budget, because you do not need a lot of money to actually have a great time. Join us on the next adventure on Buhle Bethu, only on Eswatini TV.
Let me tell you about my crush. Ngenzane inhliziyo yami embi kwakho njengesidanga.
Nkondlo yesiswati.
It is 3 in the afternoon. We are back in the living.
For men are so kind towards creation more than they even were to their own creator.
I am the greatest of this generation. They'll be calling me the girl who made poetry look cool, yo. Cool.
Eswatini Lifestyle is all about inspiration, drive, and swag. Eswatini Lifestyle is informative and fun while covering all aspects of life, be it people, places, and trends in the Kingdom of Eswatini. We got you covered. The focus is on the quality of life. Eswatini Lifestyle will spark your interest. Catch Eswatini Lifestyle every Friday at 7:30 p.m. on Eswatini TV, Sibugo Semaswati.
Right, siphindze-ke sinamukele bonkhosi sitawubuka-ke masinyane a briefing by Antonio Guterres, who is the Secretary General of inhlangano yakamhlaba letiwa-ke nge-United Nations, ukhulumisa nje simo lesichubekako e-Middle East including the Palestinian question. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres told the Security Council that we need a true humanitarian ceasefire, adding that a failure of establishing a two-state solution will condemn Palestinians, Israelis, the region, as well as the world to a never-ending cycle of death and destruction.
Mr. President, Excellencies,
I welcome this opportunity to brief the Security Council on implementation of Resolution 2712. My special coordinator for the Middle East process, Tor Venesland, will follow with his regular monthly briefing. Mr. President, Resolution 2712 was approved in a context of widespread death and wholesale destruction unleashed by the conflict in Gaza and Israel. According to Israeli authorities, more than 1,200 people were killed, including 33 children, and thousands were injured in the abhorrent acts of terror by Hamas on 7 October. Some 250 people were also abducted, including 34 children, and there are also numerous accounts of sexual violence during attacks that must be vigorously investigated and prosecuted. Gender-based violence must be condemned anytime, anywhere. Mr. President, according to the de facto authorities, more than 14,000 people have been killed since the start of the Israeli military operations in Gaza. Tens of thousands of Palestinians have also been injured, with many more missing. In Gaza, more than two-thirds of those killed are reported to be children and women. In a matter of weeks, a far greater number of children have been killed by Israeli military operations in Gaza than the total number of children killed during any year by any party to a conflict since I've been Secretary General, as clearly indicated in the annual reports on children and armed conflict that I have submitted to the Council. Over the past few days, the people of the occupied Palestine territory and Israel have finally seen a glimmer of hope and humanity in so much darkness. It is deeply moving to see civilians finally having a respite from the bombardments, families reunited, and life-saving aid increasing. Mr. President, Resolution 2712, and I quote, demands that all parties comply with their obligations under international law, including international humanitarian law, notably with regard to the protection of civilians, especially children. It is clear that before the pause, we witnessed serious violations. Beyond the many civilians killed and wounded that I have spoke of, 80% of Gaza's people have now been forced from their homes. This growing population is being pushed towards an ever smaller area of southern Gaza, and of course, nowhere is safe in Gaza. Meanwhile, an estimated 45% of all homes in Gaza have been damaged or destroyed. The nature and scale of death and destruction are characteristic of the use of wide-area explosive weapons in populated areas with a significant impact on civilians. At the same time, rocket attacks on population centers in Israel by Hamas and other groups have continued, along with allegations of the use of human shields. This is also inconsistent with international humanitarian law obligations. Mr. President, I want to stress the inviolability of United Nations facilities which today are sheltering more than 1 million civilians seeking protection under the UN flag. UNRWA shares the coordinates of all its facilities across the Gaza Strip with all parties to the conflict. The agency has verified 104 incidents that have impacted 82 UNRWA installations, 24 of which happened since the adoption of the resolution. A total of 218 internally displaced people sheltering in UNRWA schools have reportedly been killed and at least 894 injured. In addition, it is with immense sadness and pain that I report that since the beginning of the hostilities, 111 members of our UN family have been killed in Gaza. This represents the largest loss of personnel in the history of our organization. Let me put it plainly. Civilians, including United Nations personnel, must be protected. Civilian objects, including hospitals, must be protected. UN facilities must not be hit. International humanitarian law must be respected by all parties to the conflict at all times. Mr. President, Security Council Resolution 2712 calls, and I quote, for urgent and extended humanitarian pauses and corridors throughout the Gaza Strip to enable full, rapid, safe and unhindered humanitarian access. End of quote. I welcome the arrangement reached by Israel and Hamas with the assistance of the governments of Qatar, Egypt and the United States. We are working to maximize the positive potential of this arrangement on the humanitarian situation in Gaza. The pause has enabled us to enhance the delivery of aid into and across Gaza. For example, for the first time since 7th October, an interagency convoy delivered food, water, medical supplies and shelter items to northern Gaza, especially to 4 UNRWA shelters in Jabalia camp. Prior to this, minimal or no assistance had reached these locations, even as tens of thousands of people had crowded there for shelter. Also, for the first time, supplies of cooking gas entered Gaza, where people waited in lines that extended for 2 kilometers. In the south, where the needs are dire, UN agencies and partners have increased both the amount of aid delivery and the number of locations reached. And I express my appreciation to the government of Egypt for their contribution in making this assistance possible. But the level of aid to Palestinians in Gaza remains completely inadequate to meet the huge needs of more than 2 million people. And although the total volume of fuel allowed into Gaza has also increased, it remains utterly insufficient to sustain basic operations. Civilians in Gaza need a continuous flow of life-saving humanitarian aid and fuel into and across the area. Safe and unimpeded humanitarian access to all those in need is critical. Humanitarian partners carried out several medical evacuations from North to South Gaza, including to transport dozens of premature babies, as well as spinal and dialysis patients from Shifa and Al-Ahli Anglican hospitals. Several critically ill patients have also been evacuated for treatment in Egypt. Hospitals across Gaza lack the basic supplies, staff and fuel to deliver primary health care at the scale needed, let alone safely treat urgent cases. The medical system has broken down under the heavy caseload, acute shortages and the impact of hostilities. Mr. President, Security Council Resolution 2712 calls for, and I quote, the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages held by Hamas and other groups. The arrangements announced on 22 November has so far led to the release over 5 days of 60 hostages, 29 women, 31 children, held by Hamas and other groups since 7 October. Outside the arrangement, during the same period, another 21 hostages were released. This is a welcome start, but as I have been saying from day one, all hostages must be released immediately and unconditionally. Until then, they must be treated humanely, and the International Committee of the Red Cross must be allowed to visit them. The arrangement also saw the release of 180 Palestinian prisoners and detainees from Israeli jails, mostly women and children. Mr. President, Security Council Resolution 2712, and I quote, calls on all parties to refrain from depriving the civilian population in the Gaza Strip of basic services and humanitarian assistance indispensable to their survival, consistent with international humanitarian law. Much more is required to begin to address human needs in Gaza. Water and electricity services must be fully restored. Food systems have collapsed and hunger is spreading, particularly in the north. Sanitary conditions in shelters are appalling, with few toilets and sewage flooding posing a serious threat to public health. children, pregnant women, older people, and those with weakened immune systems are at greater risk. Gaza needs an immediate and sustained increase in humanitarian aid, including food, water, fuel, blankets, medicines, and healthcare supplies. It is important to recognize that the Rafah border crossing does not have enough capacity, especially taking into account the slow pace of security procedures. That is why we have been urging the opening of other crossings, including Kerem Shalom, and the streamlining of inspection mechanisms to allow for the necessary increase of life-saving aid. But humanitarian aid alone will not be sufficient. We also need the private sector to bring in critical basic commodities to replenish completely depleted shops in Gaza. Mr. President, finally, Security Council Resolution 2712, and I quote, underscores the importance of coordination, humanitarian notification and deconfliction mechanisms to protect all medical and humanitarian staff, vehicles including ambulances, humanitarian sites and critical infrastructure, including UN facilities. A humanitarian notification system is now in place and is being constantly reviewed and enhanced, including through plans for additional civil-military experts to support coordination. Mr. President, I welcome the adoption of Resolution 2712, but its implementation by the partners matters most. In accordance with the resolution, I will revert to the President of the Security Council with a set of options on effectively monitoring the implementation of the resolution. I have already established a working group composed of the Department of Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, the Department of Peace Operations, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, and the Office of Legal Affairs to urgently prepare proposals in this regard. So far, it is clear that implementation has been only partial at best, and it was woefully insufficient. Ultimately, we know that the measure of success will not be the number of trucks dispatched or the tons of supplies delivered, as important as these are. Success will be measured in lives that are saved, suffering that is ended, and open dignity that is restored. The people of Gaza are in the midst of an epic humanitarian catastrophe before the eyes of the world. We must not look away. Intense negotiations are taking place to prolong the truce, which we strongly welcome, but we believe we need a true humanitarian ceasefire. And we must ensure the people of the region finally have a horizon of hope by moving in a determined and irreversible way towards establishing a two-state solution on the basis of United Nations resolutions and international law, with Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security. Failure will condemn Palestinians, Israelis, the region and the world to a never-ending cycle of death and destruction, and I thank you.
That was UN Chief Antonio Guterres address nje simo lesiqhubeka geopolitically, particularly at Gaza, which has been quite sad to watch. Bantwana labancane siyababona bashiya emhlabeni innocent lives, whether umncane or umzala. The fact that it's innocent lives, it's quite sad.
So Antonio Guterres was addressing the situation eqhubeka khona eGaza ukuthi United Nations ibambisene nje nemavu onke emhlaba tawuzama ukuthi salokuphela lokulwa lokuqhubeka khona eGaza.
Ntsike siyafuna nje ukuxolisa ngokuthi besishilo naqala hlelo ukuthi sigathe laba qhamuka khona International Food and Agriculture Systems IFAD lebuke yona ke International Fund for Agricultural Development besigathe na Francesco Head, who is the Southern African Multi-Country Office country representative and country director Eswatini. But that's sikhulumisa rethinking investments in smallholder irrigation systems. Bese uyabambeka ngaleminye imisebenzi lebese iyavela ekuseni. Sifuna nje ukuxolisa kakhulu kulolo hlangothi.
Yeah, we've come to the end of our show today. If you've just joined us, worry not, you can still watch this episode of the show on our YouTube page. Have a beautiful day. We'll see you tomorrow.
The Mega Escape Camp Fest delivered thrills and exhilarating fun to its patrons over at Roveria Lodge in Spofaneni, and we must say they really did deliver on their promise. Squads came in to camp and have fun over the weekend and of course go on the barge to further extend their partying spirits. This is Chuki Dlamini, and for now, let's check what Eswatini Lifestyle got for you at the Mega Escape Camp Fest.